ahead in this edition of the human body. It's been written about in countless love songs, poems, and letters. The heart. It's not only crucial in emotional ballads, but it's a critical component in your body's circulatory system. Find out how. We'll also investigate how your circulatory system acts as a purification plant, cleansing the body of pollution and protecting against disease. You'll hear about the strength and stamina of the circulatory system as it carries critical oxygen and nutrients through your bloodstream. Also, how does the body stop from bleeding when cut? You'll find out about blood clotting, and you'll learn how the circulatory system fights hemorrhages through the coagulation of blood. You'll also get detailed explanations of how your body's circulatory system works to regulate body temperature. And you'll also hear from leading medical professionals about contributing factors in heart disease. Join us for this close-up tour of your body's remarkable circulatory system. Find out why it's your plasma pipeline. Every minute of every day, trillions of cells feed on nutrients and excrete waste. That exchange is critical to sustaining life. Like a big city, the body needs a transportation system to make sure its vital cargo gets where it's going. That network of byways is known as your circulatory system. It's made up of your cardiovascular system and your lymphatic system, which battles disease and infection. As Ross Joel reports, the cardiovascular system is made up of the heart, blood, and blood vessels, and its main function is transportation.
The steady flow of traffic around a big city, it's continuous. Morning, noon, and night, there are always people on these roadways. Sometimes commuters move at a crawl. Other times they race on their way, but they're always moving. Transportation systems are critical to a community's existence, and your body's transportation system is also critical to its survival. Instead of highways, railways, and airways, it has an efficient network of hollow blood vessels.
Your body, your cells, your tissues all need oxygen and nutrients to survive, and all need a way to get rid of that oxygen and those byproducts once they've been used. The circulatory system is the way that your body receives the nutrients and the oxygen that it needs, and after it processes those substances, then the circulatory system will take the substances, the byproducts away.
New York to Los Angeles. The distance is approximately 3,000 miles. A pretty fair drive. Now take that distance and multiply it by 30. The total, 90,000 miles.
Now consider the human body. It contains 93,000 miles of blood vessels, and it's up to your heart muscle to get adequate blood supply through all that mileage.
We all know a clock measures 60 seconds in a minute. In the typical person, the human heart beats 70 times per minute. Over the course of a day, the heart wins the race with 100,000 beats to the clock's 86,000. It also pumps 3,600 gallons of blood a day. It's a tremendously strong muscle, considering it's no larger than your fist and weighs just 11 ounces.
If the tissues, for some reason, don't get enough oxygen, if for some reason the blood will not get to a certain tissue, then that tissue will die.
The heart is the force behind everything you do. It's the body's engine, complete with valves and chambers like a car motor. And just like an engine needs oil to run smoothly, the heart is dependent upon a slippery lubricating liquid in order to beat easily and without friction.
That liquid is called serous fluid. It's produced in the pericardium, which is a loose-fitting membrane which surrounds and protects the heart. Your heart is divided into a left and right side. Each side has 2 chambers, for a total of 4 chambers in all. The upper 2 chambers are called the atria, and the lower 2 the ventricles. A thick, muscular wall called the septum divides the 2 sides.
Blood returns back to the heart after having passed through the body via the right atria. It then passes from the right atria to the right ventricle, goes from the right ventricle, and gets ejected to the lungs where it accumulates oxygen. After it passes through the lungs, it returns to the heart via the left atria and goes from the left atria to the left ventricle. After having accumulated in the left ventricle, the blood then gets ejected to the rest of the body to give the body its oxygen and nutrients via the left ventricle.
Although the heart is a single organ, it works like a double pump. The right side is the pulmonary side. It takes oxygen-poor blood from the veins and pumps it out through the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. There, oxygen is picked up by the blood and toxic carbon dioxide is unloaded. Pulmonary veins then return the blood back to the left side of the heart. This process is called pulmonary circulation.
Blood is then pumped out of the heart and into the aorta. Arteries then pump this oxygen and nutrient-rich blood to all body organs and tissues. Oxygen-poor blood is then recirculated from tissues through veins and back to the right side of the heart. This is known as systemic circulation. Once completed, the entire process begins again. Ross Joel reporting.
The heart is a wonderful specimen of nature's engineering design. It has 4 valves that only allow blood to flow in one direction. The atrioventricular, or AV valves, are located between the atria and ventricles and prevent a backflow of blood into the atria when the ventricles contract. And when you exert yourself, the heartbeat you feel pounding in your chest and eardrums is actually caused by the sound of the heart's chambers contracting and pumping blood. They contract, then rest, then contract again, moving blood through the chambers and out into the body. The word diastole is used when referring to the heart at rest. Systole describes the heart when it's hard at work pumping blood. The alternating expansion and relaxation of the heart sends a pressure wave through the entire arterial system. It's known as your pulse. The whole cycle happens in about 0.8 of a second or 75 times per minute. The AV valve acts as a system of one-way plumbing tubes, allowing the blood to flow away from the heart under high pressure through arteries. Remember A for away and A for arteries. Veins then carry blood back toward the heart and do so under relatively low pressure. When a doctor or nurse takes your blood pressure, it is the measure of pressure within the arteries closest to your heart.
When a chamber in the heart is contracting, it's said to be in systole. When your left ventricle, for example, squeezes blood, that's when the left ventricle is in systole. Equally as important to the squeeze is for the ventricle to relax and accept blood from the atrium, and that's called diastole.
Remember, like the air in this balloon, blood flows from areas of higher pressure to areas of lower pressure. Pressure in the heart chamber is related primarily to the chamber size and the volume of blood it contains. The greater the volume of blood, the higher the pressure.
The heart is vital to life. It is the body's engine. It consists of 4 chambers, divided into left and right sides. The upper 2 chambers are the atria, the lower 2 the ventricles. A thick muscular wall known as the septum divides the 2 sides. The heart carries on 2 types of circulation, pulmonary and systemic. The word diastole describes the heart at rest. Systole indicates that the heart is hard at work pumping blood. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, while veins carry blood towards the heart. Blood always flows from areas of higher pressure to areas of lower pressure.
The regulation of the heart's contraction and relaxation is controlled by the nervous system and is called the autonomic conduction system. The conduction system is comprised of specialized muscle tissue that generates and distributes electrical impulses which stimulate the cardiac muscle. Ultimately, the amount of work the heart muscle does is phenomenal. Its contractions send 6 quarts of blood through the blood vessels over 1,000 times a day. That means it actually pumps about 6,000 quarts of blood per day throughout the body. It's clear the heart plays a huge role in your circulatory system, but as Pat Laurie explains, the heart wouldn't be of any use if there wasn't something for it to pump and channels to pump that something through.
The tides in the ocean. With dependable rhythm, they move in and out during the course of the day. The inbound tide carries driftwood towards landfall. The outbound tidal currents then return it to the sea. The ancient Greeks believed that blood flowed in and out of the body like the ocean's tides, first moving out from the heart and then ebbing back into it before being cleansed of impurities in the lungs.
Because the blood is always flowing by a cell, what we tend to see is when the liver cell, for example, needs oxygen. It takes oxygen from the blood. When the liver cell needs to get rid of its toxins, it gives the toxins to the blood. And then the blood will deposit those toxins where the toxins need to be deposited.
Blood is a bodily tissue. It's unique because it's the only fluid tissue. Though surgeons don't perform surgery on blood tissue the same they would other tissues in the body, it can be separated and dissected into components. Essentially, blood is a complex connective tissue in which living cells are suspended in a non-living fluid called plasma, which is approximately 90% water.
The circulatory system is like a network of highways, secondary roads, and back roads. Like a car leaving downtown, as the heart beats, blood flows away from the heart of the city through arteries or highways. Like a suburban commuter, the blood then moves on to smaller secondary roads or arterioles before turning down tiny back roads or capillaries and heading for home in the body's cells.
Capillaries are actually important vessels in that they're the smallest blood vessels in the body. They're the blood vessels that are most responsible and the ones that really are dedicated to transporting nutrients to and from the cells.
Blood vessels are actually a network of tubes that carry blood from the heart to the tissues of the body and then return it to the heart. They are divided into several categories. First are the arteries, which we've said carry blood away from the heart under high pressure. Arteries have thick elastic walls which allow them to dilate and contract to regulate blood flow. The three coats on the walls of the blood vessel are called tunics. They act to reduce friction during blood flow through the arteries. They help change the artery's diameter during blood movement and protect and support the arteries. The aorta is the largest artery. The arteries carry fresh blood with nutrients to the various parts of the body. Arteries then branch out into smaller vessels called arterioles. As the arterioles enter tissue, they branch into tiny vessels called capillaries. It is through the walls of these tiny vessels that substances are exchanged between blood and body tissues. The good goes in and waste comes out.
Veins vary from arteries in several ways, although the primary difference is they carry blood toward the heart under low pressure. Their walls are also thinner. Before leaving the tissue, groups of capillaries reunite to form small vessels called venules. The venules then merge to form veins. The largest vein is the vena cava. The veins then convey the blood from the tissues back to the heart, and the process begins again. I'm Pat Laurie reporting.
Blood is a bodily tissue, and it is unique because it is the only fluid tissue. Plasma is the liquid part of blood. It is what remains when the living cells are removed. Blood vessels are a network of tubes that carry blood from the heart to the body tissues and back to the heart. Arteries, veins, and capillaries are all blood vessels. The aorta is the largest artery. The vena cava is the largest vein.
Blood makes up about 8% of your total body weight. In healthy adults, its volume is approximately 5 to 6 quarts. Now that's about 6 times the amount of fluid that is in this beaker. Blood is heavier than water and about 5 times thicker. Its temperature is about 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, and its pH is slightly alkaline. Now, blood cells are formed by a process called hematopoiesis. While there are no clear-cut centers for blood cell production in fetal life, in adults, the manufacture of these cells occurs in the red bone marrow in the sternum, the ribs, vertebrae, pelvis, and lymphoid tissue. Your blood contains red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. Red blood cells are known as erythrocytes, and their function is transportation. They have a large number of molecules of hemoglobin, which is an iron-containing protein that carries most of the oxygen found in the blood. They lack a nucleus and cannot reproduce or carry on extensive metabolic activities. Their lifespan is 120 days. Next are leukocytes, or white blood cells. Their function is to combat toxic microbes once they enter the body and to fight cancer. These cells have a nucleus, but they do not contain hemoglobin. White blood cells must work quickly since their lifespan ranges from a few hours to a few days. Platelets or thrombocytes prevent blood loss by initiating a chain reaction that results in clotting. Thrombocytes are disc-shaped cells, also without a nucleus. These critically important cells are produced in bone marrow and have a lifespan between 5 and 9 days.
One of the most important things in your body is that a lot of the enzymes, a lot of the reactions that happen in your body actually only happen at specific temperatures. And it's really the blood's responsibility to keep those temperatures where they are.
Blood plays a key role in the regulation of normal body temperature because it contains such a large volume of water, which acts as a heat absorber and coolant. Plasma also helps distribute heat evenly throughout the body, but plasma's most important role is as the liquid portion of blood that transports the cells that make up its connective tissue. In fact, plasma is the straw-colored liquid that remains when living cells are removed from blood. Now, most people understand the importance of giving blood during Red Cross collection drives, but donations of plasma are also extremely important in saving lives.
The difference between plasma and blood is that plasma is the liquid part of the blood that doesn't contain the red blood cells. And if I were to draw blood from you, that would be drawing whole blood. And if I were to remove the red blood cells from that particular part of the blood, then what's left would be plasma. The reason it's important to donate plasma is that there are people who have medical conditions who don't necessitate getting transfused with blood cells, but they necessitate having the other constituents of blood that might help their disease condition.
For instance, if blood protein drops to undesirable levels, the liver is stimulated to make more protein. If the blood's acidity level becomes too high or too low, both the respiratory system and the kidneys work to restore things to normal. Now, every day the body makes constant adjustments to ensure that plasma maintains healthy levels of its life-sustaining ingredients.
Plasma is the liquid portion of the blood. Its functions include transporting red and white blood cells and platelets and helping to regulate body temperature. It is made up of 90% water and contains over 100 different dissolved substances. These substances include salts, hormones, fats, sugars, and proteins. Now for a few trivia questions about blood. Do you know what the blood clotting process is called? It's coagulation. And what about the 4 main blood types? Can you name them? They are A, B, O, and AB. Now the last question. What does hemoglobin bind with in red blood cells to give it its red color? The answer is oxygen.
This water treatment facility collects, cleanses, and distributes clean water to thousands of people. Your circulatory system acts as a purification plant, too. Much of the work in protecting your body against toxins and foreign microbes is the responsibility of your lymphatic system. Blood services all of your body tissues and works in conjunction with the lymphatic system.
High above the Earth, water molecules change from vapor to liquid and fall from the sky in the form of rain. This process is the beginning of nature's circulatory system, one very similar to your body's system. Rain is collected in streams and reservoirs where it becomes the source of our drinking water. Once that water is used by people, it becomes wastewater, which ultimately needs purification for reuse. This pollution control facility processes 2 million gallons of wastewater each day. It is a fairly typical metropolitan treatment plant. It collects wastewater and sends it through an elaborate cleansing system, after which the water is discharged to be used again. This process is analogous to your body's lymphatic system.
The lymphatic system is set up as a one-way vascular system. Unlike the classical circulatory system, which has both arteries and veins, the lymphatic system only returns flow from organs. And it is exclusive in that it only returns the white blood cells, not red blood cells, of the system. And the white blood cells are those which make up the cells of the immune system. And the lymphatic system allows these cells to meet at areas called lymph nodes, where they can communicate with one another.
This treatment plant removes impurities from the wastewater it collects. It's similar to your lymph nodes, which act as a purification system for your circulatory system. As lymph is transported towards the heart, it is filtered through a network of thousands of lymph nodes. Along the way, bacteria, viruses, and other foreign material are destroyed in the lymph before it's returned to the blood.
The function of the lymphatic system is to make sure that no organs get overrun with bacteria or viruses which can cause destruction of the organ, which can ultimately lead to death.
The body also has additional lymph organs, which are imperative to the body's immune system. The spleen is a blood-rich organ located on the left side of the abdominal cavity, which wraps around part of the stomach. Instead of filtering lymph, the spleen cleanses the blood. It also acts as a blood reservoir and helps supply blood to the circulatory system in the event of hemorrhage. The thymus produces hormones that are critical to the protective function and performance of lymphocytes. The tonsils are small masses of lymphatic tissue that line the pharynx or throat. They're in charge of trapping and removing bacteria entering the throat. Other lymphatic tissues located in the wall of the small intestine are called Peyer's patches. These tissue areas resemble the tonsils in function. They destroy bacteria, thus preventing it from penetrating the intestinal wall. The lymphatic system is incredibly versatile. Along with disease defense, it transports fats from the digestive tract to the blood. Without the lymphatic system, your circulatory system could not function, and your body's immunity to disease would be virtually non-existent. I'm Amy Saltonstall.
The lymphatic system is a one-way system that protects against diseases. In our bodies, lymphatic vessels collect excess lymph from tissue cells and return it to the bloodstream. Our lymph nodes search for bacteria and viruses and destroy them. Our lymph organs and tissues are critical to our immune systems. They include the spleen, which cleanses the blood, the thymus, which produces hormones critical to lymphocytes, the tonsils, which trap and remove bacteria entering the throat, and Peyer's patches, which destroy bacteria in the small intestine.
One of the most important things you can do to improve the health of your circulatory system is to develop a regular exercise program. Now, while some exercises are better than others, the best training is that which develops the large muscles. Brisk walking, for example, increases the flow of blood to your heart. It also increases the amount of oxygen needed by your body's muscles. But after just a few weeks of training, your heart is able to supply that extra oxygen. Other exercises like running, biking, and swimming accomplish the same goal. These kinds of cardiovascular exercises also reduce the oxygen needs of skeletal muscles. Exercise also causes a decrease in blood pressure in people with chronic high blood pressure. Regular workouts can also reduce the buildup of cholesterol on the walls of arteries. Reducing weight is vital to keeping high blood pressure under control. High blood pressure or hypertension is the most common form of heart disease today. In fact, 1 out of every 5 Americans is afflicted with this condition.
Blood pressure, in essence, is the amount of resistance that your heart has to pump against. And a so-called normal blood pressure is 120/80, but it's not considered to be high until the numbers exceed 140/90. So anything exceeding 140/90 would be considered medically high blood pressure. Now, having said that, though, it is important to realize that a one-time reading does not mean high blood pressure. That in the medical field, what we do is take serial readings, and once you have had several readings over 140/90, then we decide that you probably have high blood pressure.
There are 2 types of high blood pressure: primary and secondary hypertension. Primary hypertension represents 95% of all cases and cannot be linked to a particular cause. It's often considered a genetic condition. Now, secondary hypertension can be traced to particular sources like adrenal tumors, kidney disease, or thyroid disease.
The way we treat hypertension is with diet, with exercise, and generally with medications which lower blood pressure.
As is so often the case, much of health maintenance is linked to lifestyle. Heart disease is the largest killer in this country. Estimates suggest that 1 of every 5 people over the age of 60 will have a heart attack. In addition, it's believed that 1 in every 4 people between 30 and 60 years old is at risk.
Heart disease has reached epidemic proportions in our country. Some of the associated risk factors for heart disease include obesity, lack of exercise, and the formation of plaque in our arteries. A high fat, saturated fat, and cholesterol diet is directly related to the formation of plaque in arteries.
Exercise is vital to the health of your circulatory system. The best training involves movement of the large muscles. Brisk walking, running, biking, or swimming all provide a cardiovascular workout aimed at reducing the oxygen need of your skeletal muscles. Regular exercise can also reduce your cholesterol. Additionally, exercise facilitates weight reduction, which is vital in controlling high blood pressure, the most common form of heart disease. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States.
In the end, your circulatory system is just like this city's transportation system. The efficient movement of people and products is completely reliant upon this network of highway arteries. Any kind of large-scale blockages or traffic jams or interruption of service can cause problems of enormous proportion. The same is true with your circulatory system. When you're running smoothly, your blood, your plasma, your lymph are all being delivered efficiently, your circulatory system represents a remarkable infrastructure. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most amazing transportation networks ever created. So the way you live, the way you eat, the way you exercise, all dramatically influence that system and your health. Thanks for taking this trip with us through the circulatory system. I'm Mike Dowling.